I'm not sure what subreddit this belongs to. Maybe our TrueOffMyChest, or maybe our relationships. But I've been carrying this around for so long that I need to get it out somewhere. This is long, so thanks in advance if you read it. I have one sibling, my older brother Eli. We grew up pretty close, at least until our late teens. Our mom raised us mostly on her own. She worked double shifts as a nurse, and Eli sort of stepped into the man of the house role early. He was protective, sometimes overbearing, but he loved me fiercely. Things started to fall apart when our dad reappeared. He'd been mostly absent since we were kids. He was charming but unreliable, and when I was 16 and Eli was 19, Dad suddenly wanted to make things right. Mom wasn't thrilled, but she didn't stop us from seeing him. At first, it felt like a dream. Dad took us to dinners, bought us things, told us he wanted to start a family business. I got swept up in the idea of finally having that picture-perfect family. Eli was skeptical from the start. Then Dad convinced me to co-sign a car loan with him when I turned 18. He said he needed my name to build my credit and promised he'd make all the payments. I believed him. Eli warned me not to. He and Dad had a huge fight about it, screaming, slammed doors, all of it. 3 months later, Dad vanished again. The car got repossessed. My credit was wrecked. Eli said, "I told you so." I said, "You don't understand." And from there, it was like something broke between us. When I was 19, I moved out for college. Eli stayed in town to help Mom with bills. We barely talked. Every time we did, it ended in arguments, mostly about Dad, sometimes about Mom, sometimes just everything. When Mom got sick, stage 3 ovarian cancer, I was 24 and living 2 states away. Eli called to tell me. I flew home, of course, but by then things were strained. He was her full-time caregiver, burned out and exhausted, and I, though I tried, wasn't around enough. She died a year later. At the funeral, Eli barely looked at me. I tried to give a eulogy and cried so hard I could barely speak. Afterward, I hugged him, and he stood stiff in my arms. Then he said something that's haunted me ever since. "You always show up when it's too late." We didn't speak again for almost 10 years. Fast forward to this year. I'm 31 now, married, no kids yet. My husband, Mark, has never met Eli. Every time he brought him up, I'd say something like, "It's complicated," and change the subject. But in January, I had a dream about Mom. One of those too real ones where it feels like she's right there. She was sitting at the kitchen table, making coffee, humming an old Fleetwood Mac song. And she said, "You should call him." I woke up crying. It took me a week to even look him up. His number had changed, but he was still in our hometown. Still using the same Facebook profile picture of him holding a dog, some kind of pit mix with a big smile. So I messaged him, just, "Hey, I don't know if this is still your number, but it's me. I'd really like to talk if you're open to it." He didn't respond for 3 days. Then, "Hi, yeah, this is Eli. What do you want to talk about?" That was it. No warmth, no anger, just neutral. I typed and deleted about a dozen replies before finally sending, "Everything, or maybe nothing, I just miss you." He didn't answer that one either. I figured that was the end of it. But the next morning, he texted, "You free this weekend? We can meet for coffee." I met him at this little diner we used to go to with Mom after church. I got there early and sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes because my hands were shaking so bad. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him at first. He's filled out broader shoulders, beard, a few gray hairs, but his eyes are exactly the same. He looked at me for a long second and then said, "You look like Mom." And that was it. I started crying right there at the hostess stand. We sat down, and at first it was awkward as hell. We talked about safe stuff, the weather, his job, he's a mechanic now, my husband, my city. But then we started talking about Mom. And somehow that broke the wall. He told me about how hard her last months were, how angry he'd been, not at me, but at everything. How he'd felt like he was drowning trying to keep everything together. I told him how guilty I'd felt for leaving, how I'd convinced myself he didn't want me there. We both cried quietly over cold coffee. Then he said, "I'm sorry I said that thing at the funeral." And I said, "I'm sorry I gave you so many reasons to." He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. His hand was rough, warm, trembling a little. "I missed you, kid," he said. "I missed you too. I whispered. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for 10 years. We started texting a few times a week after that. Nothing deep at first, memes, photos of his dog, her name's Daisy, updates about our lives. Then in April, he invited me and Mark to come visit for a weekend. I was nervous, Mark even more so, but we went. The house Eli lives in now used to be Mom's. He's fixed it up a lot, new paint, new floors, even a small garden in the backyard. But her touches are still there. The old teapot, her favorite framed quote, "Do small things with great love," her worn Bible on the coffee table. It hit me harder than I expected. Eli must have seen it on my face because he said, "I almost sold it after she passed, but I couldn't." We sat outside that night, drinking beer under the porch light, and for the first time in my adult life, it felt easy. We laughed about childhood stuff, how he used to chase me around with a frog, how Mom burned every batch of cookies but insisted we eat them anyway. At one point, he said quietly, "I thought you hated me." And I said, "I thought you didn't want me anymore." He shook his head. "Nah, I was just broken. I didn't know how to not be mad." There was this long pause, and then he said, "You were still my sister, always were." Over the next few months, something shifted. We started calling each other regularly. I'd call him after work just to talk, like we used to as kids. Mark got close with him too. They bonded over cars and bad jokes. In July, Eli came to visit us for the first time. We took him to the beach, grilled burgers, stayed up late talking about Mom again. And one night, sitting by the fire, he told me something that made me cry all over again. "When you stopped calling," he said, "I used to check your Facebook once a week, just to make sure you were okay." I asked why he never reached out. He said, "Because I didn't know how to start. I was afraid you'd hate me." It's strange, isn't it? How two people can love each other so much and still let silence win for years. In August, Eli gave me something I didn't know existed, a letter from Mom. He said he found it after she died but didn't know whether to send it to me. He'd kept it all these years. It was short, handwritten in her loopy cursive. "My babies, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I need you to promise me something. Don't let grief turn into distance. You're each other's first home. Love each other even when it's hard, especially then." Mom, I sat on his couch and sobbed like a child. He put his arm around me, and for the first time since we were teenagers, I let him comfort me. We didn't say anything for a long time. We didn't need to. It's been almost a year now since that first message. We talk every week. Sometimes he drives up to visit us. Sometimes we drive down. We're planning a family trip next spring, our first ever as adults. We even started a small project together, fixing up Mom's old recipes and making a family cookbook. Eli does the cooking. I write the stories that go with each dish. We've called it Love, Mom. Sometimes I still feel sad about the years we lost. 10 years of birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays we'll never get back. But I've learned to be grateful that we still have time now. People say family is complicated, and it is. But it's also resilient. I used to think we were broken beyond repair. Turns out we were just waiting to find our way back. If you're reading this and you're estranged from someone you love, I won't tell you to just call them. Sometimes it's not safe or healthy. But if it is, if there's even a small chance that they're waiting too, maybe it's worth it. Because sometimes, when you finally reach out, they reach back. And that can change everything. Update 4 months later, Eli just called to tell me he's started dating someone. Her name's Amber, she's lovely, and he asked if Mark and I would come down for Thanksgiving. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Mom's recipe book is almost done. The last page says, "For Eli and Sam, thank you for finding each other again." I think she'd be proud.